time. And in the relation to the hamstrings, they're moving in what we would describe as 3 planes of motion. So this time we're going side to side. Just give that leg a little shake. It's okay. Nearly finished. Don't go anywhere. And one more time. This time all you're going to do is you're going to come forward and you're just going to rotate and back. So if you hold on here, perfect. So you're just going to rotate just a little across the body, come back to the middle and rotate across. But you should always feel the stretch at the back of the hamstring. Perfect. Good. So what we're looking at is when we create tension through the hamstring and when we add movement through the body, the vibration travels into that muscle, into the connective tissue. It increases blood flow, it increases circulation. But because we're moving, in this case, the pelvis, that's creating the reaction down into the hamstring muscle where we're able to give the hamstring a much greater stimulus than a traditional, maybe static stretch. Like a bit of a shake. Feel okay? Do the other side. Otherwise, you'll be walking around in circles. So, same thing is we're going to go forward and back first. So, forward and back. So, we have the setting on 30 hertz, which is 30 vibrations per second. And the idea being is that that vibration is traveling into the body, increasing blood flow and circulation. The most important thing is that the client, in this case, is always in a controlled movement, obviously a pain-free movement. So just would now hold down and just rhythmically rock forward. Good. Keep going. Good. Shake. There's big anticipation from the audience. No pressure. Back in again. So this time you come down to the point where you feel that you've got the stretch. If you need to hold on for a little bit of balance, and you're going to push your hips from side to side this time. So rhythmical movement is key to utilizing vibration and maximizing the potential of the machine, but also ensuring that we're feeding the hamstring, in this case, the right information, because we know that there are 3 hamstring muscles, and all of our muscles in the body are always moving in all 3 planes of motion, all of the time, in function and particularly in sport. And then the last one, it's just going to be rotation across the body. Perfect. That's it. Good. So nice and rhythmical. And as you come forward and down, you should feel the stretch at the back of the hamstrings. Does it feel okay? So we have 55 people to go. Just keeping you interesting. Good. Nearly there. Okay, give the legs a bit of a shake. So what I'm going to get you to do this time, just for the final part, is you're just going to come over and, almost like you did at the beginning, just touch the toes. Took the head down. Take a deep breath. And as you breathe out, just relax, just ease further down. So just stand off. I feel okay. And just, so go back into your toe touch and just see how that feels. Put the hands straight. So now you can see from 2 or 3 inches, just come back down. Just come back again, just so we can see. Touch the floor, hands straight. So you can see from this position, probably in the sake of, in 3 minutes, we've probably increased range of motion by maybe 2 or 3 inches. How does it feel? Yes.
Double or triple time for obtain the same thing. I mean, this was quickly and a little bit more warmer than usually common warm-up. This is the difference. Yeah.
So just to reiterate, thank you very much. Just give him a round of applause again. Thank you. So just to try and reiterate what he just described was it feels warmer than normal and that it's quicker than normal. So that kind of leads us into, well, what is happening in the body and why is the machine essentially accelerating the benefits? It's a very natural stimulus. So what we are essentially doing is stimulating the body's natural reflexes, and therefore, as a result of stimulating that reflex or those reflexes, we're also increasing blood flow and circulation. So from a muscle and a connective tissue standpoint, when a muscle is warmer, it's therefore going to become more pliable, and therefore your range of motion is going to increase very, very quickly. So there are some key things to remember, and obviously I know we only have 4 hours, so I'll try and keep it brief. The type of vibration that we get from power plate is what's called a multidirectional or multiplanar movement. So in other words, the vibration is predominantly up and down. It also moves forward and back, and it moves side to side. So it's a very natural, a very authentic stimulus for your body's reflexes and your proprioceptors. But what differentiates power plate from many other types of vibration is the harmonic nature of the vibration wave. So what we get on power plate is a repetitive harmonic vibration that is a very natural, very safe stimulus for your nervous system. Oh, we have some more volunteers. The rule was if you're late, you have to be on the volunteers, right? Don't worry, it's okay. I'm joking. Push-ups time. So, with harmonic vibration, with a multiplanar movement, what we're essentially doing is we're creating a dynamic environment for the body. So obviously I've used the image of football and the fact that when we play sport, obviously football being the example in the context for today, the body is constantly challenged by the surface, the pitch, undulations in the surface, and what we're able to do using vibration is to recreate that very dynamic environment. So I need 3 volunteers now. Oh, that was okay. That was my big joke of the day, so that's not too bad. What I would like to do again is, and I think maybe, yeah, you could probably all do this, if that's okay. I'd just like you to stand up. So if you could just stand up for me. It is optional. Not? Optional. Okay. So, for the last 10 years, I've traveled around the world. I've been very fortunate to travel around the world educating on vibration and sports performance, particularly sort of football and golf. And my ambition is to just get the whole room, wherever I am, to stand up, because that's, okay. But hopefully I'm going to try and give some sort of context to why you're going to be doing it. So, please do be careful, because I appreciate you're on a step. And for some of you, you may be wearing high heels. So, all I want you to do is just stand very comfortably, very naturally. If you by a table or too close to your chair, just kind of get a little bit of space. And all I want you to do is to just kind of lean your body forward just to the point where you kind of feel that you're going to tip over the edge. But obviously don't tip over the edge. Okay? And then just kind of come back a little bit. Okay? So we have to get some photos, right? This is just purely for entertainment purposes. There's no benefit to it. It's just purely entertainment. So what I want you to do is really get to the edge of that point. So just as if you're kind of looking over a cliff and you're kind of just hovering before you feel that you actually want to step. So don't fall. Just kind of hold. And then come back again a little bit. Then do it again. I'll know when you're doing it because I'll see the change in your face. Perfect. So just go forward again. And just a little bit longer. Just right the way to the edge. Right the way to the edge. Keep going and just kind of hold it there. Hold it there. Hold it there. Hold it there. And then just relax. Okay. Can you describe what parts of the body, what muscles maybe kind of switched on and activated for those that were actually sort of leaning forward. Did anybody feel a part of the body that kind of started to maybe contract rapidly? You had hamstrings and calves. The calves, anybody feel their calves contract? Yep. Okay, their feet grab the floor. Okay, maybe the core muscles switch on depending on how hard you were working and how serious you were taking it. So there's a couple of people like this, like not going to happen. So you have to get right to the edge, okay? And then you can grab a seat. And you should give yourselves a round of applause because that was the most people in a room so far. Thank you very much. Now, there is a reason for that. But what happened is, did any of you, when you felt your calf and your hamstring, did you have to tell it to do that? Did you have to say, right, I need to contract my calf, I need to squeeze my feet on the floor? No. So what we know is that our center of gravity, when our center of gravity falls outside of our base of support, our body reflexively responds. So we have a reflex mechanism whereby if your center of gravity falls outside of your base of support, reflexive muscles fire in order to keep you upright. Does that make sense? Which is a subconscious reaction in order to maintain upright function. So therefore, what we're doing on power plate is constantly challenging the body's center of gravity over its base of support. So when we're stood on the machine, the nature of the vibration creates a reaction in the body where we are having to constantly stabilize. But the nature of the vibration is very controlled. It's controlled instability. So it's not going to throw me off to the point where I can't control my movement, but it's going to start to engage my proprioceptors, my joint proprioceptors, my spinal stabilizers, in order for me to maintain my balance to perform a movement. And that's why it's important when we look at the application in sport, is that the closer the movement that you do on the machine that relates to the sport, the greater the carryover in that sport that you get. So essentially, as we know in football, whether we've used football as an example, the body is constantly changing direction. You're landing, you're turning, when we're pressing the ball, if we're in and out of possession, the body is constantly challenged with your center of gravity being displaced. So this becomes an opportunity to safely condition or rehabilitate a footballer or an athlete in an environment that is naturally stimulating those body's reflexes. 3 hours to go. So, I appreciate that, one, I'm speaking in English, and two, many of you will already be very familiar, and probably more familiar than the neuromuscular system and the nervous system and things like that. But I just wanted to just quickly run through sort of a 10-minute background on what happens in relation to the neuromuscular stimulus of whole body vibration. So we know that we have reflexes. We know that our reflexes are subconscious, they're purposeful, they're very specific. And the reflex that we're often familiar with is the patella, the knee tap reflex. Okay? So that is a single stimulus that, as a result of that stimulus, fires a signal to your spinal cord. The spinal cord fires the signal back, and the muscle contracts. Do we agree? Perfect. So imagine then that if we're able to then recreate that reflex many, many times a second all over the body, based on the position and the movement that we're in relation to the machine. So this is not a single contraction. This is multiple contractions or multiple stimulus many, many times a second based on the frequency that you set the machine. So in other words, what we're doing is we're stimulating the body's natural reflexes. And we have some descriptive terms for that. We call it reflexive stabilization. And reflexive stabilization is what you just experienced when you stood up. That's your whole body responding reflexively. What we also have is what we describe as a local response. So in other words, if I'm in a position where let's say I'm doing a squat or I'm doing a push-up, there's certain muscles in tension during that exercise. What we then get is what we describe as a rapid reflex response in that muscle. And hopefully, if it syncs well, Julian will attempt to just play a little video. Click on the R3. Just maximize the screen. Is it possible to turn the lights down just for a second? So this is a slow motion capture of obviously an individual doing a push-up on the machine. This is slowed down. This is sort of a slow motion footage of a push-up. And what you will see, hopefully you can see that way with the lights, is there is this consistent, continuous waveform of the muscles that are in tension. So as a result of creating tension in the muscle, or in the connective tissue and the fascia and the muscle tissue, when that area of the body is stimulated with vibration, we have this rapid reflex response, or tonic vibration reflex. In other words, every aspect or every part of those limbs in tension are reflexively responding. This is this rapid reflex response. Rapid reflex response didn't go down well with the audience. You lost me at hello. So that's a visual representation of what happens in the body. Jules, do you want to move on? So what does that mean in relation to performance? Well, hopefully that was a little insight into the technology and how the body responds. Now, obviously, the context of today's discussion and today's talk was around what does that mean for performance enhancement and injury prevention? Well, this rapid and precise, repeatable environment the body is in starts to prepare your athlete for the dynamic environment that they're going to play and compete or train on. So it starts to prepare the body for shock absorption, for receiving ground reaction force, because essentially, when you're on a vibration platform that moves in the way that power plate moves, you are increasing ground reaction force to the body. If I am stood on the floor isn't moving. If I replicate that movement on top of power plate, all of a sudden now the floor is moving underneath me, but it's also dropping away from me and coming up and hitting me. So essentially, it's increasing ground reaction force, and therefore, again, preparing the body, preparing the athlete for the sport that they are competing in. One of the key things that we found from the last sort of 5, 6, maybe 7 years of traveling around and getting a lot of feedback, a lot of insight from our international colleagues that are using this day in, day out with athletes, Marcel being one of them, obviously. I'll hand over to you in a second. And okay. The key thing that we want to talk about is when you have a harmonic vibration, when the body is exposed or is stimulated with a harmonic vibration, you have the potential to increase motor learning. So we know that the body learns through repetition. And having 30 to 35 to 40 times per second of harmonic stimulus allows the body to essentially learn that particular pattern of movement. And would you agree, if you're in rehab, whether you're in performance, the ability of an athlete to learn a motor pattern and be able to control that motor pattern is a very, very important part of performance. And we describe that as a task-driven environment. So we know that traditional gym training is often very technique-driven. And traditional weight exercise, Olympic lifting, very much have a very sound place in our athletic performance and our athletic conditioning. However, what we also have to appreciate that in sport and in life, we are task-driven. So in order for me to create a movement, whether it be a cutting movement, whether it be a pressing movement, there's lots of subconscious reactions going on in the body in order for me to be able to perform and optimize that movement and that movement quality. So what this allows us to do with power plate, and this again comes down to the application of power plate, is it allows us to start to challenge the body in this subconscious task-driven environment. So when we look at some of the practical examples, what we have found more than anything over the last 4 to 5 years is that the more the movement that you're doing on the machine is authentic to the movement that the athlete or the client needs to perform in the sport or in life, gives you the biggest transfer and carryover. So I think I'm going to just, I planned a 4 to 8 hour talk, so I thought I would just gauge it in, we can kind of skim through a little bit. One of the key things in relation to elite sport is preparation. And again, obviously all of these slides and information will be available to you. I also prepared golf. Does anybody play golf in Romania? No, good job we didn't do golf. So when we talk about performance and we talk about football, what we've done with a lot of our application is based it on the fact that the body is three-dimensional and our conditioning component is referenced from the World Football Academy. So when we look at all of our movements and all of our exercises, we then said, well, how do you take the game of football and how do you break it down into its football actions and its key components, and how do we then train that and integrate power plate within that environment? So, and of course that's related to any sport, whether that be rugby, whether it be obviously soccer and football, any type of sport has some key actions. So what we wanted to try and do was to then say, well, when we're trying to recreate these football actions like pressing, like heading, like transitioning, they're broken down to their constituent parts of movement. So for example, if I'm going to go and press the ball, then there'll be a sprinting component and there'll be a stopping component. And the deceleration component is hugely important when we're talking about performance. We get very focused on acceleration, but it's also important that if I can't decelerate the movement, my acceleration performance is ineffective. So what we've then broken this down into is how would you recreate that in relation to working with power plate or any type of movement, whether it be in the gym or also whether it be out on the pitch. And we've taken an example of the lunge for pressing or the drop squat for heading and a lunge and a leap for transitioning. Now, from the lack of volunteers and the fact that no one has come in football kit, and you're in a suit, then we're not going to do any practical. The only thing I wanted to talk about a little bit was how we would recreate single leg balance and stability in, for example, a passing exercise. So I think I may need a volunteer. It's okay. So I have to do something with, okay, perfect. So you're on camera, so you do. Do I have time? One example. Okay, so if we look at the passing versus a volley, then we probably have different movements, and we're going to actually create a balance exercise using the plate to replicate how the body has to control and stabilize movement in relation to a pass in this example. So all I'm going to get you to do simply is just going to, you right or left footed? Right or left? Right. So you're just going to recreate a toe touch, and you're going to come forward, going to come out to the side, and you're going to go across to the other side. Okay? most important thing is that we pre-position the body so that we're ready, so that left leg is kind of stable and you're toe touching, and you're simply just going to come back and touch. So you're going to go forward, you're going to go over to the side, and then over to the other side. Happy? Good. So slight bend through the knees. So what we're actually able to recreate is that challenge for the standing leg. So nice and comfortable, and all you're going to do is come back to a toe touch. So when we talk about how do we recreate and challenge the body's proprioceptors, but in an environment where it's safe, in an environment where it's controlled, in an environment where the structures of the body have to accelerate and decelerate the movement, what we're now doing is we're getting very close to the football action of passing. Okay? What we would then look to do is to then come onto the floor and recreate that environment, obviously with the ball. Feeling confident? Okay. So we'll do it on the floor just for safety of the audience. So if I want to then recreate the same position, so if we think about the left leg, we think about the left leg passing, we think about the left leg going across, in all the different angulations, what that's doing is it's affecting the foot, the knee, the hip, in all different planes of motion. So in order for me to recreate that position, I can adjust my body or I can adjust the athlete to take them from a heightened proprioceptive response down to the floor to where they can now introduce the task of the volley back. So simply just going to be forward to start with. Yeah, just forward. Good. Okay. Good. So that was the movement there. You stay in your position. And then in order to recreate the movement here, then we've got a slight crossover. So again, you can see that we're recreating that position. Okay? So maybe you come here. And then you're going to turn and come into that. That's it. Perfect. Good. There we go. So you can see, hopefully if you can see what's happening through the stance state, by changing the angulation of where the receiver is, we've taken the body from a heightened sense of stability and proprioception, but we're recreating the motor pattern, and then we're adding in the task of the ball, which again cements that motor pattern within the body. Well done. You succeeded. Good job. And obviously we have lots of different potential applications of whether we do that. And what I wanted to do just before we finish is make sure I'm going the right way. We could obviously spend a lot of time going through the practical components. But for those of you that are working with athletes, for those of you that are working in rehabilitation, then obviously what we've just described is one way of applying the technology. When we look at things like acute muscle response, so for example with the black bars, every single muscle that was involved in that particular exercise, which was a squat, is showing an increase in activation as a result of the vibration. The carryover to that is whatever you're currently doing with your athletes, whether that be in rehabilitation, whether it be in performance, we see that power plate has the ability to be integrated into anything that you're already doing. So if you're utilizing it for pre-activation prior to Olympic lifting, if you're utilizing it for intercept mobility during heavy lifting or more traditional loaded exercise, you can obviously take load on top of the machine. So we have a lot of our rugby guys that are using it in a weighted environment, again, to challenge the body in relation to reflexes under load. We look at things like TRX and suspension training, and obviously things like foam rollers and trigger points, any type of soft tissue strategy. So it's beyond the scope of this short session to cover all of the potential application, but what we wanted to try and do is to lay the foundations that no matter what you're doing at the moment, utilizing power plate as an integrated part of what you do will make what you do more effective for the right reasons, with the right athlete at the right time. And again, the same sort of approach would be in rehabilitation, and you have a memory stick to take away, I believe, with lots of this information on, and lots of access to the research, particularly around ankle and knee stability. This particular one obviously was on dancers. There's some really interesting research on short latency response in relation to hamstring activation, again for knee stability, so more sort of a rehabilitation environment. And we have some research around ACL rehabilitation as well. So again, out of the context and the scope of today to talk about that in detail, but what we're trying to do is take a very evidence-based approach to our application of the product. And I guess to just finish with a video in relation to real life of a club that we're working with over in the UK, where we have a physio and we have an S&C coach utilizing power plate day in, day out as part of their conditioning, performance, and obviously rehabilitation, which is the context of this particular video, showing how, again, utilizing vibration can enhance all existing methodologies. There is some text on the screen. This particular athlete was pain in the adductors when changing direction, twisting and turning, and striking a non-moving ball. So this is kind of acute rehabilitation. So this is in their sort of strength and conditioning environment. We're looking at an assessment process. And then in conjunction with the physio is how can we utilize power plate to create mobility, create sport-specific strength based on this particular, which was an adductor problem for this particular athlete. So kind of a real-life setting, day-to-day. Replicating a lot of the motions that the body goes through, for this example, in terms of a kicking action. And what we found, particularly with this athlete, was a lack of mobility in the big toe particularly, and the foot and ankle. So what you'll see shortly is the application of a soft tissue technique or a scraping technique, which some of you may or may not be familiar with, again, where you're introducing an external soft tissue stimulus, enhancing that stimulus as a result of the vibration. So increasing blood flow and circulation, increasing that neurological input with, in this case, was a scraping tool, but ultimately to try and create dorsiflexion in the big toe. So this is something that we work very closely with, and again, obviously, our intention in the same with the relationships over here in Romania is to ensure that we have the opportunity to communicate, to support, but also share best practice in terms of how you would then take this technology and implement it into your performance, implement it into your preparation, and of course, your recovery and regeneration for your athletes. Thank you very much for your time. I will take any questions, but I do appreciate that that was a lot of information from England. So on behalf of myself and everybody, thank you very much for your time. Now, obviously, if you want to come and try the plates, obviously we're going to kind of break now for an opportunity just to kind of maybe ask some questions rather than doing it formally. So if you would like to come and try the plates, maybe sort of chat about some of the information that we've gone to, that would be great. Is there anything else I need to tell everybody?
Acum Acum vă invităm în final să testați pe pielea dumneavoastră aceste 3 aparate, mai mult decât formal în prezentarea pe care Steve a făcut-o, și nu fiți timizi în ceea ce privește. Este o oportunitate și dacă sunteți interesați, cu tot dragul noi vă putem ghida în acest sens. Vă rugăm. Și dacă aveți întrebări, de asemenea, puteți să le puneți pe măsură ce suntem în jurul aparatelor. Mulțumesc!
Înainte de a termina, vă mulțumim și noi pentru prezență. Sperăm că a fost o prezentare instructivă pentru dumneavoastră. La momentul la care Clinica LPF va fi funcțională, acest aparat va fi disponibil pentru cei care vin în recuperare. Le dorim celor de la PowerPlay mult succes pe piața românească și toate cele bune.